All right, welcome to Troops into Transportation. I'm going to take you through the Washington State DOT pre-trip. We're going to take it step by step, stage by stage. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump into the truck and we're going to do your brake test. Okay, we're in the truck. We're going to perform the brake test today. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to tell the examiner that we cannot start the brake test until the PSI is below 90 PSI. So with the key off, the engine's not running and the key is in the off position, I'm going to fan my brakes and I'm going to fan the brakes down below 90 PSI. Okay. I'm at 75 PSI, tank 1, 85 in tank 2. So I'm below 90 PSI. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a safety start. Clutch goes in, make sure I'm in neutral. Key goes to accessory only. ABS light goes on, ABS light goes off. Wait for the needles to cycle. DEF is 3/4 full. Safety start. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the examiner that I'm going to rev the engine and build the pressure back up, and I'm expecting the air governor to cut out between 120 and 140 PSI. My governor cut out at 125 PSI. At this time, I'm gonna shut the truck off. I'm gonna keep my hand on the key, turn it back to the accessory position. ABS light went on, ABS light went out. DEF is 3/4 of a tank full. I'm gonna simulate my wheel chocks. I'm gonna take a low gear, and I'm ready to start my brake test. All right, the first test of the brake test I'm going to do is my 1-minute air leak test. I've got my phone set for a minute right here. The first thing I'm going to do on the 1-minute air leak test is I'm going to release the brakes. Primary, secondary, tractor trailer valve is in. Wait for them to stabilize, which they did. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my foot on the service pedal. I'm going to wait for that to stabilize as well. And then I'm going to call out a reading on tank 1 and tank 2. Tank 1 and tank 2 is at 100 PSI. I'm going to start my time now. I'm going to hold the pedal for a minute. And I should not lose more than 4 PSI in that minute in a combination vehicle. Okay, my minute's up. Time is expired. My foot is still on the service pedal. Tank 1 and tank 2 are still at 100 PSI. I lost 0 PSI in tank 1 and I lost 0 PSI in tank 2. All right, the next test I'm going to do is a low air warning indicator test. I'm going to continue to fan the brakes, and I should hear and see an audio and visual low air warning indicator come on at 55 PSI or above. I'm going to fan my brakes now. All right, I can see and hear my audio and visual low air warning, and it came on at 60 PSI, tank 1. All right, third test I'm going to do is my tractor trailer protection valve test. I'm going to continue to fan the brakes, and both of my valves should pop out at approximately 40 PSI. I'm looking at my valves and not my gauges at this point. Okay, both of my valves popped out at 25 psi, tank 1. That concludes my brake test. All right, at this point I'm going to transition into my in-cab. I've retrieved my wheel chocks, and I'm going to do a safety start. So the clutch goes in. I was in gear, so now I'm in neutral. I'm going to turn the engine off, turn the key in the off position, turn it back to accessory only. I've got my DEF light that came on and off and my ABS light that came on and off. Safety start. Now at this time I'm going to go into my in-cab checks. I'm going to start with my driver's side mirror. Driver's side mirror is clean, clear. It's not cracked or damaged. No obstructions. Properly adjusted to me. I would check the passenger window, or excuse me, the passenger mirror the same way. My driver's window and my passenger window goes up and down. They operate properly. They're both clean, clear, not cracked or damaged, and no excessive dirt. I'm going to demo my air horn. City horn.
Too low on air.
Then I'm going to go to my seatbelt. Seatbelt assembly up here, securely mounted. No loose or missing parts. Then I'm going to go to my seatbelt itself. It's not cut, worn, torn, or frayed. Then I'll do a demo on my seatbelt. It's securely mounted at the buckle. There's no missing or broken parts down here, and it's properly adjusted to me. I'm going to go up to my spare bulbs and fuses up here. I've got extra spare bulbs and fuses. I'm going to go to my windshield. My windshield is secured. It's clean, it's clear, it's not cracked or damaged. There's no illegal stickers and no obstructions to block my view. Then I'm going to go into my windshield wipers. Low operates properly and high operates properly. And I'm going to do my spray. Windshield wiper spray operates properly. Now the wiper arms, the wiper blades are secured and they're not damaged. I'm going to go to my gauges. I'm going to start with my oil pressure gauge up here, slowly rising to operating range. I'm going to go to my water temp gauge, again, slowly rising to operating range. I'm going to go to my volts. My volts are at 14 and charging, and at this time there's no warning lights. Then I'm going to go to my dash lights and turn my lights on. Low beams operate properly. Left signal operates properly. Right signal operates properly. High beams operate properly. And four ways operate properly. Alright. Then I'm going to go over to my defrost. I'm going to turn it on defrost setting. Turn it on. Put my hand above the dash. Verify that I got air coming out of the defrost. I've got air coming out. Defrost operates properly. I'm going to change it over to the heat. Open the vents. I'm going to verify that I got air coming out of the heater vents. The heater operates properly. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to my fire extinguisher located under my seat, where it's secured, it's charged, and it's rated. Then I'm going to go to my warning triangles underneath the passenger seat over here. And the triangles are secured and they're serviceable. I'm going to transition into my tug test, and before I do, I've got to verify that I'm above 90 psi. Tank 1 and Tank 2 are both at 125 psi. So I'm going to transition into my tug test at this time. Clutch goes in. Take a low gear. I'm going to press my tractor valve in first. The red valve is out, yellow valve is in. I'm going to ease off the clutch until I get a little resistance. Tug 1. Tug 2. Trailer brakes held. Pull the yellow valve out. Press the red valve in. The trailer valve goes in. Once again, do 2 tugs. 1, 2 tugs. Tractor brake held. At this point, I'm going to do my rolling stop. Both valves go in. I'm in low gear. I'm going to roll forward 5 miles an hour. Clutch goes in, brake goes in, loosely holding the wheel from the top. I did not pull left, I did not pull right, and I stopped smoothly. Pull my brakes at this time, verify that they're out, go back to neutral, turn my lights off, and I'm going to turn my wheel all the way left, and turn the key off in the off position. And that concludes my in-cab, tug test, and rolling stop. Alright, at this point, I'm going to exit the vehicle, unbuckle my seatbelt. I'm going to climb out backwards, demonstrating 3 points of contact. Okay. Close the door behind me. I'm going to unlatch the hood from this side. Unlatch it from this side. Okay. Now we're ready to start our pre-trip. The pre-trip starts with your overview. This is the overview. I'm going to start with my clearance markers up top, my left and my right turn signals and reflectors. They're clean, they're clear, they're not cracked or damaged. Proper color for their location is amber. Next thing I'm going to call out is my left and my right headlights. They're clean, they're clear, they're not cracked or damaged. Proper color for their location is white or clear. They are both secured. Last thing I'm going to look for is that there's no visible leaks underneath. Okay, no visible leaks. Gently open the hood, and you're going to come over to the passenger side. And there's 2 things that we're checking on this side. We're going to talk about the hose overview. These are all of my hoses right here. Couplings and fittings are tightly connected, tightly seated, and not leaking. My hoses, the condition of my hoses, they're not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Next thing I'm going to call out is this alternator right here. Point and identify where it's at. The alternator is securely mounted. It's not cracked, dented, damaged. Securely mounted, not cracked, dented, damaged. It's in the front, so it's belt driven and it operates properly. I'm going to talk about my wires on the alternator. The alternator wires are not cut or burnt or frayed. Then I'm going to talk about the belt. The alternator is belt driven, so we'll talk about the condition of the belt. The belt itself is not cut, worn, torn, or frayed. And when I press on it by hand, the belt should not deflect more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. All right, that's everything on this side that you're going to check. And then come around to the driver's side. And I'm going to start with my coolant reservoir up here. Coolant reservoir is securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. It's clear, so it's a sight glass, so I can see through the sight glass that it's above the refill mark. Okay? Next thing I'm going to talk about is the engine dipstick is right here. All right? I would ensure that it's above the refill mark. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to check is this water pump, and it's right here. This round metal piece is the water pump. It's securely mounted. It's not cracked. It's not damaged or leaking. It's belt driven. It's in the front, and it operates properly. I would check the belt the same way that I did the other side. So the belt is not worn, cut, torn, or frayed, and when pressed by hand, it does not deflect more than 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch deflection. From there, I'm going to go to the power steering reservoir, which is securely mounted. It's not cracked, it's not damaged or leaking. It also has a sight glass like the coolant reservoir, so I can see that it's above the refill mark. If it didn't have a sight glass, I would check it by the dipstick. Okay? Then I'm going to follow this lower hose, this lower black hose. On the other side of the frame, that's going to take me to the power steering pump. Power steering pump is securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. It's gear driven. It's in the back and it operates properly. Right above that is the air compressor with all the lines coming into it. The air compressor is securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. And it operates properly. I said gear driven on that, I think. Okay. Then we're going to come down to the frame itself. Here's the frame. The frame is not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no broken welds. There's no loose or missing cross members, and there's no holes in the box. Then I'm going to come out to the steering gearbox. There's one thing that I forgot on the power steering reservoir. I forgot to talk about the hose. The hose is, there's no loose or missing clamps. The hose itself is not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Now I'm going to go into the steering gearbox, which is right here, securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking also. There's no missing nuts or bolts. It shares a hose with the power steering reservoir, so I'll talk about the hose again. The hose is not cracked, damaged, or leaking, and there's no loose or missing clamps. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the three-piece linkage. 1, 2, 3. This is your drag length, idle arm steering knuckle. Okay? Excuse me. Pitman arm, drag length, steer knuckle. All right, that's your three-piece linkage. There's two parts to that. First part is your arms, rods, and links. They're secured. They're not bent, worn, damaged. There's no missing, if they're not loose, there's no missing nuts, bolts, cotter keys, or pins. The next part of that is your joints and sockets. Joints and sockets are not worn. They're secured. They're not bent, cracked, damaged, and also they are not missing any nuts, bolts, cotter keys, or pins. The next thing we go into is the four suspension parts, and the first thing is this right underneath here. That's your spring hanger, securely mounted to the frame. It's not cracked, bent, damaged, no missing nuts or bolts. There's no loose or missing bushings on the spring hanger. The springs come out of the spring hanger, and the springs are not bent, broken, missing, or shifted. The springs are going to go into your U-bolts right here. The U-bolts are secured. They're not cracked, dented, damaged, and there's no missing nuts or bolts on the U-bolts. And lastly, we're going to talk about the shock absorbers right here. They're secured, securely mounted. They're not damaged. They're not leaking. Then we go into the 5 braking components. Braking component starts with the brake line and brake hose. Couplings and fittings are tightly connected, tightly seated, not leaking. The brake line itself is not cracked, damaged, or leaking. It's not worn. It's not torn. There's no holes. The air line supplies air to the brake chamber. Brake chamber is securely mounted. It's not cracked, dented, or damaged. And there's no loose or missing clamp, which is this ridge on top. Then you're going to go into your slack adjuster and push rod right here. Slack adjuster and push rod is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. No missing nuts or bolts. With the brakes released when pulled by hand, this should not move more than 1 inch of play. Then I'm going to go into the brake drum. Brake drum is down here. The brake drum is not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no holes. There's no missing nuts or bolts. It is free of contaminants such as debris, oil, and grease. This is covered by a dust cover, but the brake liners are not worn dangerously thin, and it's free of contaminants such as debris, oil, and grease as well. Then we can talk about the inner and outer sidewalls. Inner and outer sidewalls are not cracked. They're not damaged. They're not leaking. Then I'm going to go into the top of my tire, my steer tire. Tread is evenly worn. Tread depth is no less than 4/32 on the tread depth. I'm going to finish my tire by finding the valve stem and valve stem cap, which is down here. Valve stem cap are present. They're both made of metal. They're not pinched, crimped, or damaged. And I check the tire pressure with the tire pressure gauge. Next thing I'm going to go into is my rim. My rim is not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no weld repairs. Okay. Then I'm going to talk about my lug bolt holes. Lug bolt holes, there's no cracks radiating between the lug bolt holes. There's no distortion at the lug bolt holes. Then I'm going to talk about my lug nuts. They're all present and they're tight. If they were loose, I'd see shiny threads and rust trails. Then I'm going to talk about my hub seal. My hub seal is present. It's securely mounted. If it had a sight glass, I could tell that it's above the refill mark. If it did not have a sight glass, I'd pull the plug cap off and check it by hand. And that finishes your card A. This is where I start with B card. This is your side marker. It's also your 4-ways. It's also side signals, okay? So you're going to call them all out. My side signal reflectors, 4-ways, are clean, clear, not cracked or damaged, proper colors, amber for their location. Okay. We called out the mirror itself on the inside, but we're going to call out the mirror mount on the outside. Mirror mount is securely mounted. It's not cracked or damaged. There's no missing hardware, no missing nuts or bolts. All right. If you didn't call the window from the inside, we're going to call it out from the outside. The driver's window is clean. It's clear, not cracked or damaged, no excessive dirt. Okay. Then we're going to call out the door. You're going to open and close the door. The driver's door opens and closes properly. Then we're going to look at the hinges inside. All right. All my hinges are securely mounted. They're not cracked. They're not damaged. There's no missing nuts or bolts on the hinges. All right. Then we're going to call out the inner and outer seal right here. Are secured and in good condition. All right. So that's the door. Now we're going to go down to the def cap and def tank. Okay. This is your def tank. Here's the def cap. Def tank is securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. It's securely mounted. Def cap itself is tight, present, tight, and is also not leaking. All right, we're going to go to the fuel tank itself right here. Fuel tank itself is securely mounted to the frame. The tank is not cracked, damaged, or leaking. The tank cap is present, it's tight, and is not leaking. I'm going to call out my driver steps, my side steps, and my catwalk all together. They're securely mounted. They're solid, which, in other words, it can hold my weight, and it's free of debris, free of foreign objects, okay? So it's securely mounted, it's solid, and free of debris, free of foreign objects, okay? So once I did that, I consolidated them all, so we're good to go on that. Did the tank, the def. So now we're going to move to the back of the cab over here. I'm going to look at my reflective tape. Reflective tape is clean, it's clear, it's properly fixed to the vehicle. Okay? Going to mention that. Then I'm going to go to the exhaust. All right? The support frame is securely mounted and not bent or damaged, no missing hardware. The exhaust itself is elevated. The sleeper cabs will have the exhaust buried underneath. Day cabs are going to have extended pipes coming up the top. So the exhaust is securely mounted. It's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. There's no holes. There's no severe dents. There's no carbon soot or rust. All right? And it does not leak. And then you come down, follow the stack itself, and you're going to come down to where these clamps are. All clamps are present and tight, and they're not leaking right here. The reason that I do this way is because it flows. It just comes right down into here. Okay? So when you're looking right here, this is your drive shaft. Drive shaft is present. It's not cracked. It's not damaged.
Yep.
Okay? It's not leaking. The drive shaft goes into the U-joints, which is right underneath here. Y'all can see it?
Yep.
All right. Securely mounted. It's not cracked or damaged. There's no debris or foreign. It's free from foreign objects in the U-joint. Okay. Then we're going to go to the frame. I'm going to call out the frame the same way that I did the engine compartment. The frame is not cracked. It's not bent. It's not damaged. There's no broken welds. There's no loose or missing cross members, and there's no holes in the box. Okay. So that's it back here. I'm going to go to my air lines and my electrical line. My electrical line is right here. The electrical connection is tight. It's tightly fitted. It's not leaking. My emergency and service line and my electrical lines combined, the condition is they're not worn, torn, frayed, cut, taped, chafed, spliced. They're not tangled. There's no steel braid showing through. They're not crimped. They're not pinched. Okay? All that for 1 point. That's a lot of verbiage for 1 point. Okay? But that's how you call out the airlines. And then we're going to transition over back to this side. The glad hands are tightly seated, tightly fitted. The couplings and fittings are tight, tightly seated, not leaking. Electrical line up top here is locked in place. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about the bulkhead on the trailer, which is part C. I'm going to start at the top with the clearance markers, side signals, and reflectors. Even though this is just a sticker, it's a reflective sticker. So we mention it. We call it out. All right? So the clearance markers, side signals, and reflectors are clean, clear, not cracked, damaged, proper color for their location is amber. Then we go into the bulkhead itself. the bulkhead itself. There's no holes, no severe dents, no loose or missing rivets, and the bulkhead can contain the weight of the cargo. Now, when you do the side of the trailer, it's the exact same verbiage with one exception, and that's the DOT tape on the side. So I'm going to call it out again. Side of the trailer. No holes, no severe dents, no loose or missing rivets, and can contain the weight of the cargo. And you've got your DOT tape clean, clear, properly fixed to the vehicle. Okay? So next thing I'm going to do, since we're done with everything on the inside here, I'm going to bundle my splash guard and my mud flap together. They're securely mounted. They're not damaged. There's no holes, no missing hardware. Now on the back of the mud flap, it has its DOT tape, clean, clear, properly affixed to the vehicle. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, there's two ways to do this. You could do the axle first and then work your way in. The way that I like to do it is go underneath and get everything on the underneath, and then I come out. Okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to climb underneath here. If you guys think you can fit underneath here, come on under. All right, this is what we're looking at. The bottom of the trailer, the bottom side of the trailer where that metal plate is, that's your apron. Okay?
Yeah.
So the apron is not cracked, damaged, there's no holes, and it lies flatly on the fifth wheel skid plate. Next thing I'm going to call out is that there's no gap or daylight between the apron and the fifth wheel skid plate. Okay? Then we're going to talk about the skid plate itself, fifth wheel skid plate. Securely mounted to the platform, that's that little A-frame piece that it sits on. Fifth wheel skid plate securely mounted to the platform. Fifth wheel skid plate is properly lubricated, properly greased. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. There's no missing nuts, bolts, cotter keys, or pins, and can hold the weight of the trailer. Okay? Coming down from the apron itself is the kingpin. The kingpin is not bent, cracked, or damaged. The locking bar goes across the kingpin, that bar that goes across. That's your locking bar. That's locked and fully surrounding the kingpin. All right, then we're going to go back to the platform and talk about the platform. The platform is securely mounted to the frame. The platform is not cracked, bent, damaged, and there's no loose or missing nuts, bolts, cotter keys, or pins on the platform. Next thing we're going to talk about is that release handle over there. All right, it's locked and latched in place, and it's securely mounted and not damaged. Okay. And then lastly, this is a fixed fifth wheel. This is not a sliding fifth wheel. So your paperwork has verbiage on it, something about it, sliding fifth wheel. This is fixed, so you got to mention that. Okay? Okay. This bar that goes right across here, it's right below the fifth wheel skid plate. That's your torsion bar. Okay? Torsion bar is not cracked, bent, or damaged. All right? Then we come back to your tail light assembly back here. The only thing that we're not calling out is the backup light. So, what all are these functionings? Brake light, tail light, four ways, and signals. So my tail lights, four ways, brake lights, and signals, and reflectors are clean, clear, not cracked or damaged. Proper color for their location is red. Everything in the back that you're calling out, the back of a vehicle, is red. Anything else is going to be an amber light. Okay? Now, so we got the lights. We got all the coupling systems. We're going to talk about suspension again. All right? The spring hangers are securely mounted. All right? You can't really see it from here, but I can see them up front here. That's why some people start with the suspension up front, because you can actually see the spring hangers. Both spring hangers are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no loose or missing bushings. The springs come out of the spring hangers. They're securely mounted. They're secured. They're not bent, broken, missing, or shifted. All right, springs go into the U-bolts. The U-bolts are secured. They're not cracked, bent, damaged. No missing nuts or bolts on the U-bolts. Okay? We've got shocks back here also. The shocks are right here. They're securely mounted. They're not damaged. They're not leaking. Now you got an extra component, an extra suspension component. Okay, that's your airbag right here. On top of the airbag is your air mount. That's that metal cap. You got to mention that metal cap. That's your air mount. Okay, secured, no missing nuts, bolts on the air mount. Okay, the airbag itself is not cracked, damaged, or leaking. Simple as that. Then we go into the five braking components, the same that we had up front. All right, we start with the brake line, the brake hose, right? Couplings and fittings are tight, they're not leaking, they're tightly seated. The brake line itself, there's no holes, it's not cut, worn, torn, or frayed, and it supplies air. It supplies air to what? It supplies air to the brake chamber. Brake chamber is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, dented, or damaged, and there's no loose or missing clamp. It's that ridge on the top is the clamp. Okay, and then we go to the slack adjuster and push rod. Slack adjuster and push rod is securely mounted. It's not cracked, it's not bent, it's not damaged. No missing nuts or bolts. With the brakes released, when pulled by hand, that should not move more than 1 inch of play. Then we go into the brake drum down here. Brake drum, it's not cracked, it's not bent, there's no holes, not missing any nuts or bolts, free of contaminants such as debris, oil, and grease. Then we go to the brake liners inside. Free of, it's not worn, dangerously thin, and it also is free of contaminants such as debris, oil, and grease. Okay, so we've done our suspension, we've done all of our coupling system, we've done all of our braking components, we've done the torsion bar, the light hanger in the back. Okay, then we turn around and we do this right here. This is your landing gear assembly, your landing gear frame. It's securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. And there's no loose or missing hardware. Okay, landing gear itself is fully raised, in the fully raised position. The landing pads are intact, in good condition, and there's no missing nuts or bolts or pins on the landing gear pads. And the crank handle is locked and latched in place. So we're going to crawl out the outside. Okay, so we've done the suspension, we've done the braking components, everything underneath. Last thing is the axle itself. All right, this is a dual axle, so we're going to mention everything in plural. Okay, so my tires, because they're duals, the tires cannot touch. The rims must touch. The bud spacing is what's in between the tires. There's no debris or foreign objects in the bud spacing. All right. My inner and outer sidewalls on my tires are not cracked, worn, torn, or damaged. Then I'm going to go up to the top of my two tires. Tread is evenly worn. Okay? These can be recaps. Tread depth on these tires is no less than 2/32 back here. Okay? Valve stem cap are present. It's not crimped, bent, or damaged. The cap and the valve stem are made of metal, and I check the tire pressure with the tire pressure gauge. Okay? My rims are, they're secured, they're not cracked, they're not bent, damaged, there's no weld repairs. Okay? My lug bolt holes, there's no cracks radiating between the lug bolt holes. There's no distortion at the lug bolt holes. My lug nuts are all present, they're tight. If they were loose, I'd see shiny threads or rust trails. Okay? And lastly, this is an axle seal. Hub seal on the steer axle seal back here. Axle seal we can't actually check, but what we can say is that it's securely mounted and there's no visible leaks. Okay? So, because we've already done the bulkhead and the side of the trailer, we're done with the trailer until we get to the very back. All right? We've done everything underneath. We've done all the coupling system. I got this flash guard mud flap, all five suspension components, all five braking components, okay? And the axle's done, so we move on. We've done the landing gear. We mentioned the DOT tape, right? So we're done with that. This is where it takes you like 3 minutes away from being done at this point, okay? So now we're underneath here. This is the third time that you call out the trailer. So the trailer frame is secure. It's secured. It's not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no broken welds. There's no loose or missing cross members, and there's no holes to the box and floor. Now the verbiage changes just a little bit when you do the trailer floor back here, or do the trailer frame back here. The other two times you're calling out the frame is almost identical, but it's that last phrase back here. There's no holes to the box and floor. Okay?
That's the box right there.
Well, the box would still be that frame.
Right.
Okay?
And the floor.
But exactly right. The floor is underneath. Okay? Now, it also says something on your paperwork about a sliding tandem. First of all, this isn't a tandem. This is just a single axle. And you would see a bunch of holes. So this is a fixed axle. This is fixed. All right? It's not a sliding assembly. So we've done the trailer floor. That long bar that goes across here, this is your torsion bar. Okay? So we're going to call out the torsion bar again. And once you come over here for a second, there's a whole bunch to see over here. So there's your long torsion bar, okay? Underneath the spring hanger, going this direction, these are your torque arms, all right? There's one on each side. So you've done your torsion bar. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged, securely mounted. The torque arms themselves are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, or damaged either, okay? We've done our trailer floor. Now we go into the suspension parts. And we got all the same suspension parts we did up front, so we call them out again. My spring hanger is securely mounted, right? Not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no loose or missing bushings. The springs come out of the spring hangers. All my springs are not bent, broken, shifted, or missing. The springs go into your, what? What do they go into?
Hangers.
Springs go into
Spring hangers?
the U-joints, the U-bolts.
U-bolts.
U-bolts are securely mounted. They're not cracked, bent, damaged, and no missing nuts or bolts. Okay? Now, this does not have shock absorbers back here. You only call out what you see. If it's not there, don't say it just because you said it up front. And Kirk knows they're not back here, by the way. So if you say it, he's going to laugh at you. Okay? Okay. So we go straight into the 5 braking components, which are the same as we did up front. My brake line and hose. Couplings and fittings are tightly connected. There's no leaks. Okay, the hose itself is not it's not cracked, damaged, or leaking. It's not worn. There's no holes, and it supplies air. Supplies air to the brake chamber.
Yep.
Okay, brake chamber is securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, damaged, and you can notice the difference with these brake chambers back here than the ones up front. These are double band brake chambers back here.
Bigger.
Okay, they're bigger and fatter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So dual band brake chambers back here. So you could say that plural as well because they're brake chambers.
Okay.
So my brake chambers are secured. They're not cracked, bent, or damaged. There's no loose or missing clamps on that. Then we go into the slack adjuster and push rod. Securely mounted. It's not cracked, bent, or damaged. There's no missing nuts or bolts. And with the brakes released, when pulled by hand, it should not move more than 1 inch for play. Then we go into the brake drum itself on the inside. The brake drum itself is not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no holes, no missing nuts or bolts. Free of contaminants such as debris, oil, and grease. Then we go into the brake liner, the brake lines, pads. Not worn, dangerously thin, and they are also free of contaminants such as debris, oil, and grease. Okay. So we got all the suspension parts. We got all the braking components. We got the torsion bar, got the trailer floor, trailer frame, the torque arms. So now it's time to come out and do this rear axle. Okay. So this is the trailer axle. It's identical, exactly identical to the drive axle, and you're going to call it out the same way with one exception. Okay. This has a hub seal like the front axle, like the steer axle. All right. So don't get them confused. Once again, this axle here is a dual, so I'm going to call it out in plural form. All right. My tires are secured. The tires cannot touch; they must be separated. The rims must touch and be connected. My bud spacing in between the tires are free of debris, free of foreign objects. My inner and outer sidewalls they're not worn, cut, damaged in any way. The top of my tires are evenly worn. The tread is evenly worn on top. Tread depth back here on this axle is no less than what?
230 seconds.
230 seconds on the tread depth. Okay? You're going to finish the tire by finding the valve stem and the valve stem cap, which is right here. But there's two, right? My valve stem and my valve stem caps are present. They're not crimped or damaged. They're made of metal, and I would check my tire pressure on my tires with the tire pressure gauge. My rims are not cracked, bent, damaged. There's no weld repairs on my rims. My lug bolt holes, there's no cracks radiating between the lug bolt holes, and there's no distortion at the lug bolt hole. Then we're on the lug nuts again. All my lug nuts are present. They're tight. If they were loose, I'd see shiny threads and rust trails. Now we're on the hub seal. The hub seal, I would check it the same way I did the steer axle up front. Okay? Hub seal is secured. No visible leaks. I could see through the sight glass if it had one that it was above the refill mark. If it didn't have a sight glass, I'd pop this plug cap out and check by hand. Okay? Now, we're back at the back of the trailer. My side markers and reflectors are clean, clear, not cracked or damaged. Proper color for their location is red. My rear mud flap, I would check this the same way as I did up front. All right? Now we're on the very back of the vehicle. I'm going to start at the top, just like I did the overview up front. My clearance markers, my signals, my four-ways, my running lights, tail lights, brake lights, and reflectors are clean, clear, not cracked or damaged. Proper color for their location is red. Okay? Then we open and close the door. We only go up about just a few inches. We close it, lock and latch it in place. All right? So the door opens and closes properly, just like I did the driver's door. All right? Opens and closes, locks, latches in place. The door has its DOT tape, clean, clear, properly fixed to the vehicle. It's got its rubber seal, door seal on the bottom, and it's in good condition. Okay? So we did the lights, we did the door, we did the DOT tape, we opened, we closed it. Now officially you're done. You don't call anything out from here below. You don't call out the pintle hook. You don't call out the glad hands. You don't call out the DOT bumper. But I want you to come over to the right side, and I want you to take a slow walk up this right side, and I want you to look as you go up and think, did I get the spring hanger? Did I get the bushings when I mentioned the spring hanger? I can see the torque arms from here, right? Did I miss them? Do a mental checklist of what you called out prior, okay? You're not done with the pre-trip until you say you're done with the pre-trip. So just kind of take a slow walk up here so you can see the brake chambers. Did I get all the braking components? I did. All right. What about the landing gear? Did I say everything? Did I mention the pads? Did I get the mud flaps? Now, believe it or not, this has happened many times where the entire exhaust gets missed. You're not going to miss it from this side. It's right here. Okay? This won't get missed. When you're looking at the tank, you might have called the tank and missed the cap. If you missed the cap, you didn't get the point. Okay? And the hood will be open. All right? Let's say you missed something on the hood or in the engine compartment. Last opportunity. Even if you miss something on the in cab, right? My spare bulbs and fuses are up top. I forgot about those. It's not too late. The only thing that's too late is your brake test. And if you miss something on your brake test, you wouldn't even be out here doing your pre-trip. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that's your B and C. All right. So that's what we're going to transfer into.